Okay, so this afternoon I'm sort of gonna give a presentation that I've entitled "Environmental New Product Development through the three-dimensional concurrent engineering approach." This presentation is sort of an overview of the PhD work that I'm doing, and hopefully at the end you can sort of give me some of your input and your ideas. So basically, the main objective of my work is to look into using three-dimensional concurrent engineering-based approaches for the effective integration of environmental considerations into new product development. So what is three-dimensional concurrent engineering? In its simplest form, it's the simultaneous design of your product, your process, and your supply chain. So if we look at it a bit further, you can sort of see it as the evolution of traditional concurrent engineering. So companies are now pretty good at developing their products and the processes at the same time and sort of thinking about the relationships between the two. But what three-dimensional concurrent engineering says is that you also need to have that extra consideration of your supply chain early on. So don't leave supply chain decisions and designing until after you've decided what your product is and how you're going to make it. So try to pull that a bit further in. So that is what three-dimensional concurrent engineering is. So three-dimensional concurrent engineering sort of came about 10 years ago. And it's been there. Some people use it. So you may be thinking, so why am I here talking about it now? Why do I think that it has relevance? And hopefully in the next few slides, you'll understand why I think that there's value within 3D CE. So if we start looking at businesses and why they're in business, some of them want to innovate, they want to be competitive, they want to make products that people can buy. And one of the things that you can do is you can sort of focus to the future and try to see what then is coming up. If I can become good at something that people are going to value in the future, then I'm more likely to stay in business. So if you look at waves of innovation, people have sort of gone back and said, oh, the first wave, things to do with water and iron, were really big. And at the moment, we're sort of getting into the sixth wave, and it's sort of full of things like sustainability, green issues, renewable energy. So you can see the green trend in there. And we know that these days there's regulations that are coming up, sort of asking certain products to be greener. And then customers are demanding greener products. So if you're a company and you want to remain competitive, or you focus that this isn't something that people are asking for now, but they probably will, based on the innovation trends and where things are going, you can then look to environmental product development. So in terms of competitiveness, you can explore your current capabilities and competitive advantage while also looking out for what's out there so you're not left behind. So that whatever you're doing now, when it doesn't provide an advantage, you still have that next thing that's coming up. So in terms of environmental products development, you can say in some industries right now it needs to be your capability. It's come to the stage where it's being asked for, so you need to be good at it. So you need to now actually start doing it. And then for other people, it's not. It doesn't need to be a capability right now, but you can use it to your advantage if you do it well right now. So as you all know, when you start looking at the environmental performance of your product, it's sort of the whole life cycle thinking. You need to consider everything from your sourcing decisions to your raw material extraction, how you manufacture the items. So it's sort of everything that you have to think about. And within those, there's the supply chain. So now the idea of 3D CE comes back in. Your supply chain now has importance within that phase that you're designing your products, because it will have an impact later on the environmental performance, which is this thing that you're looking to harness if you want to remain competitive or become competitive in the future. So suddenly your supply chain has more importance within your product development process. And for you to use it, you need the corporation. You need to get them to help you with your product development. So that's sort of where the true value of 3D CE lies. when you start integrating environmental considerations in your new product development process, now you need the help of your supply chain. Now you need that early supply chain design and consideration to come in. So suddenly you have that missing link, which is the supply chain, and with this view of 3D CE, you can accomplish that. So looking at 3D CE before, which was product design, process design, and supply chain design. If you then added the environmental considerations, you're now looking at eco-design, environmentally responsible manufacturing, and green supply chain design. So there's that environmental thing going through those three. So that's environmental 3D CE. And just like 3D CE, it sort of occupies this space within that. So then if you're a company and you think, okay, I'm going to do this, I am going to try to be greener, make greener products, and I'm going to adopt this E3D-CE approach, how then can you do that? How can you take this view that I need to incorporate my supply chain early and actually make it happen? So one of the sort of approaches that I'm looking at is a supply chain information sharing based approach. So this is sort of starting simple and saying, you can start by getting your supply chain to share information with you. And then that way, during your product development process, you have more information and you have a better idea of how the decisions that you're making sort of implement the product that you're designing. And your company already deals with the supply chain, so you will have your supply department, which already has different types of relationships that have been formed based on making transactions with your supply chain. And then if you look at it sort of from the perspective of the designer, so it's the idea that you're the designer, you're working, and what you want to come out with at the end is the product design, some manufacturing plans, and an outline of suppliers. So you need not just to have sort of different components, but to have an idea of if these components came from here and they had this in them, then this would have this effect. And or if we used this supplier who's there for the manufacturing, then it would have this impact. So to do that, you would need information, and then you can have your information in your supply chain database, which feeds into your product designer. And that information has to come from your supply base. And obviously you can do your environmental assessments and then go back and forth to see how your decisions make any differences based on what you choose for your supply and where your products are coming from. So then once you sort of have an idea of how you can do it, so you're the designer, you know that I can get information and use that information to make decisions, how then can you, what else can you be offered that can help you? So then there's the web-based information sharing portal, which I'm sure you're familiar with from this project. So it's the idea that your supply base is feeding you that information, and you can have that information and use it while you're doing design. And then on the other hand, there's sort of the mapping. So it's the idea that before, if you're going to have information from your supply chain, you need to know what your supply chain looks like. You need to know what is out there. So it's useful to have an idea of the picture of the product supply chain and any viable alternatives that you could have. There's no point then sort of picking a certain supplier but then finding that you cannot use them. So you sort of need to have a good picture of what you can use and the constraints within that. And the idea of this is, I mentioned before that your supply chain department will have relationships, and usually these sort of come from transactions. So you go to someone, you buy something, you get the thing that you want. You could argue that's minimum engagement, and your relationship is just your average buyer-seller relationship. But then, if you start engaging in more information sharing and trying to encourage that practice, your engagement with your supply chain increases, as well as your relationship, it strengthens because you're communicating a bit more. And then if you keep moving on, and you sort of get good at this supply chain information sharing, then it allows you to reach a stage where you can then engage in new product development collaboration with your supply chain. So now you're not just talking about asking them for little bits of information, but you're now at the stage where you can say to them, we have been working together really well, so do we want to work together to improve this? So you then move to a different level of engagement and an improved relationship through information sharing. So in a way, you can sort of see supply chain information sharing as this gateway that allows you to take your supply chain and really embed it into your product development process sooner. And really to conclude, so my work sort of makes the argument that the social demands and regulatory demands to behave more responsibly for companies. And if you look at 3DCE, it holds real promise for you to integrate those considerations into your product development process. And at the same time, it has the potential of allowing you to be competitive when it comes to environmental performance of your product. And again, supply chain information sharing offers a non-invasive way of sort of starting that process of really having your supply chain embedded in your product development process. And that's the end.